You will get there in the end. It will be okay. You're not the only one. There's others out there. And I thought, that's it. This is my answer. This is what I've got to do. Hi everyone, my name's Kat DeLuca and I wanted to jump on and start a little bit of a vlog to talk about my life and dealing with postnatal anxiety, business, DeLuca Apparel. But first, I suppose I wanted just to talk about my pregnancy and my birth with my son, because it was pretty challenging for me and it caused me to have a fair bit of anxiety. So fell pregnant just after my honeymoon, which was in November 2018. And at this time I was still working as a physiotherapist. So very manual work that I need to do. I was also driving a lot. My job at the time required me to drive and see people in their homes. So there was a lot of sitting as well as a lot of manual work. By about week 20 in my pregnancy, I started to get this really severe rib pain. So it was on my right-hand side towards the back, and it sort of just started as a bit of a niggle, but stayed longer and longer, and it was worse when I was standing up or sitting down. Really the only thing that was good for me at that time was lying down. So I was starting to struggle a bit with work, and gradually as the weeks went on, the rib pain got worse and worse, to the point where I really couldn't be standing for longer than 30 minutes without being in extreme pain. So I ended up needing to go on to maternity leave earlier than I would have liked. It was around week 30. I started to sort of swell up like a balloon, basically. I started packing on all this fluid, which can be normal in pregnancy, and it just seemed to make the back pain even worse. I woke up one morning, and as I was walking down the hallway, I was wobbly, like I sort of walked in a diagonal and ended up hitting into the wall. So I was like, that's really odd. I checked my blood pressure and it was 150 over 80, I think, at that point in time. So I knew that that was fairly high. I decided to go into the hospital, and because they have a clinic where if you're experiencing any sort of symptoms that are abnormal while you're pregnant, you can go in and see them. So I went in and I was seen by the obstetrician, and they tested my urine, and it turned out that I had a condition called preeclampsia, which is characterized by the high blood pressure and evidence of protein in your urine, which can sort of say that your kidneys are starting to struggle. So preeclampsia can be pretty serious in pregnancy. It can actually be life-threatening. So the doctors at the hospital decided to admit me to hospital. So this is at week 34 of my pregnancy. And the symptoms weren't bad enough for them to want to do an emergency C-section right then and there, to keep me in hospital, put me on blood pressure medication, and see if they can get things under control and keep baby inside for a bit more. I was in hospital for just over a week, feeling horrendous, because blood pressure medication, if you've never been on it before, it's not a very fun thing. It can just make you feel really horrible, apart from the fact that you're already feeling horrible because of your high blood pressure and you've got all this fluid on board and you're heavily pregnant. Now you're in a hospital, so I was in a public hospital, and so you're sharing a room with other people. It's very noisy, it's very difficult to get to sleep. So all those things weren't really helping with my anxiety. So I decided to come home and continue taking the blood pressure medication at home. I didn't want to stay in hospital anymore because I was not getting any sleep and it was just making me feel worse. And I only happened to be home for one night. And then on the second night, this is at 35 weeks and 5 days, I went into labor. Within half an hour, I was having contractions that were 1.5 minutes apart. So there was no build up at all. It just sort of went from 0 to 100. Ended up going in for an emergency C-section. When my son Chase was born, he was a really healthy weight. He was 3 kilos, but he was a little bit blue and his oxygen saturation wasn't ideal. Spent 3 nights in the nursery. He was only on oxygen for an hour, or maybe 2 at the most. Then he was off that, but he needed to stay in the nursery because he needed to be on a glucose drip. I suppose my first real challenges at being a mother came into practice because when I went down to see him, not only was it really painful because I'd had a C-section, I wanted to try and start breastfeeding, but we tried and Chase just couldn't latch at that point in time. So a lactation consultant come and see us, and we had the nurses, and I swear everybody was helping me with my boobs and getting them in the right position and Chase in the right position to try and make it all work. But it just wouldn't happen at that point in time. So this was definitely the start of some of my anxiety and stress around him, because it wasn't just as easy as I had sort of hoped it or expected it to be. I just continued to hand express, and then he was able to come back upstairs and be in his little bassinet while I was still in the hospital. And we came home and we got settled in, and still he wasn't latching at home, so we were making appointments to go and see lactation consultants in the community. We were getting community nurses to come around and see us at home. Some of the nurses from the hospital came and saw us at home. So there was like all these appointments, you know, there was still the stress of trying to start breastfeeding. And then we slowly started to realize, you know, that he wasn't sleeping very much and that he was quite upset a lot of the time. But again, this is our first baby. You just assume that they're going to be upset and that they're not going to sleep very much. And I suppose to an extent that is normal. But this went on then for the next few weeks. And then it was sort of around week 4 where I was just an absolute mess. I was extremely sleep deprived, and I sleep terribly at the best of times. So to add on top of that, even worse sleep was really, really challenging. So my husband and I were sort of splitting the shift because obviously he still had to go to work. So I would sleep in the first half of the night, try to sleep, and he would then sleep at the second half of the night. So I was sort of getting woken up around midnight, rocking him, trying to calm him down because he was just screaming and screaming and screaming and wriggling and writhing and just upset. It was a nightmare. He just never seemed to settle. And if he did settle, he would settle for 10 minutes, or he would rarely maybe settle for half an hour, and then he'd be back up again. Surely this isn't right. Surely he's meant to sleep a bit longer than what he is, where he's happy or at least not upset. And we started to think about, what else could it be? Is it wind? Is it colic? Is it reflux? He wasn't vomiting, you know, so we didn't really consider reflux because he wasn't vomiting. So you start Googling and researching and trying to find what it could be. And then you try all these techniques. You try different positioning. You try rubbing their tummy in a certain way to try and help with the wind. You try positioning them a different way. You try rocking them a different way. You try swaddling them a different way. And then you hear all these, you know, about SIDS and that babies should be flat on their back. But then you read, some people try lying them on their side or on their tummy, but then that's dangerous. But do you give it a try? We sort of started to think of anything and everything. And I was then looking for different formulas to try him on because he still wasn't breastfeeding at this point in time. So was it the formula that he was on? Was that causing his tummy to be upset? Then you start looking into different formulas and more expensive formulas and prescription formulas and other remedies like wind relief, colic relief drops. I would have tried 5 or 6 different colic/wind relief drops. 3 different formulas. We gave the formulas like a good week each. So all of this worrying, concern, what is it? I went to the GP. Now my GP is on the other side of town, so we wanted to try and get Chase a GP that was local, and we found this woman who was nearby, and she was relatively young, but still a GP. So we went to her and she said, no, it's just colic. Some babies just are upset and they just cry and they will grow out of it, and it's very normal. Surely it's not normal. I don't know, he just seems so upset, and then you think mother's intuition, you know, I know something's wrong. I'm with him all day, but the doctor says it's okay. So I take him back to the GP a few weeks later and say things aren't different, things aren't improving, he's still not sleeping. She still says it's fine, don't worry about it. I'm just starting to have massive panic attacks. My anxiety is starting to really cripple me. Nothing seems to be changing. Nothing seems to be getting better. He's not sleeping. He seems to be in agony. He would scream from 5 p.m. through till like 11 p.m., sometimes even till 1 a.m. He would just scream and scream and scream, no matter how you held him, how you wrapped him. He was dry, he was fed. No reason for him to be screaming in our heads. I mean, I was like breaking down. I was that distraught. I was becoming a little bit obsessive about what can I do? I mean, I had already tried everything and still nothing was getting any better. One day I was talking to a friend of mine, and he had mentioned that his partner had suffered similar things with their daughter, and that she had gone to a private hospital near us, a mental health hospital. That's it. This is my answer. This is what I've got to do. And given I had suffered with some anxiety in the past, I had already been seeing a psychiatrist that worked at that hospital. I was admitted into this hospital, and literally within 30 minutes of arriving, the nurses said, your son has silent reflux. And I was like, what the hell is silent reflux? So silent reflux means that they're getting reflux, but they're not actually vomiting. So it's still coming up, you know, burning their esophagus, but then it goes back to that horrible, horrible pain. And I was like, oh my God, like I had just spent the last 6 weeks, so he was 6 weeks old at this point, 6 weeks, feeling like something is wrong with my baby, going to the doctor multiple times and being shut down and told that it was nothing, that it was colic, that he would outgrow it, not being listened to having my thoughts and feelings acknowledged and validated. And those nurses that work there just within half an hour just made me feel like I had really made the right decision, and that thank God I was finally in the right place, and that my son's going to get sorted out. And with him getting sorted out with his reflux in turn, that's obviously going to help me and my anxiety. They organised a paediatrician to come and see my son the next day. And the fantastic thing about this hospital is that ward that you're on is a mother-baby unit specifically for women suffering with perinatal anxiety and depression. So everybody that's in there is in the same boat as what you are. Their symptoms and that are probably a little bit different. Their situation's a little bit different, but it is the same condition. And they've also got a baby or they're pregnant. You can really relate to them. So you don't feel like you're on the outer. You feel like this is more normal than what you're expecting. And obviously the nurses, this is what they deal with all day, every day. So they're very understanding as well. It felt like I was really in the right place. And the biggest thing is that in this particular unit, the nurses look after your baby at night. So from 8 p.m, you give your baby in the bassinet and that to the nurses, and they've got their schedule of feeds and whatever that they're going to be looking after for the evening, and you get to go to bed and sleep. You can put your earplugs in. You're in a room by yourself, so you're not sharing a room, and you can sleep, which for me was massive, because that was particularly the biggest thing that was causing all of my anxiety. Was extremely sleep deprived, and there is a reason why it is a form of torture. So for me, and I think for all the mums there, being able to get that sleep does massive things for your mental health. Other things that you do when you're there, you're obviously seeing a psychiatrist regularly. You're probably on medication. I was medicated for my anxiety, and you also partake in cognitive behavioural therapy. So you see a psychologist as a group with the other mums. You go a couple of times a week to a session that lasts a few hours, and you just talk about your experiences, and they run you through all these activities, and it really helps you understand anxiety and depression, and it gives you tools to be able to manage those things. So that is also a very big part of healing and recovering from your anxiety and your depression. And then there is a lot of downtime as well. So there's like a communal area where there's a lot of play equipment for the babies. So you're sitting there with the other mums and their babies. So it's like a big mums club. Like, you get to talk to other people, you make friends. Like the women that I met there, some of them I am so close to, even though we live so far apart and we don't really see each other that much. I'm still so very thankful to have them in my life, and I know that they will always understand me. We can always touch base if needed. There's also a cafe on site as well, so you can go and get a coffee. There's a outdoor area, so you're not confined inside. You can go outside. Once you've been there for a few days, and if your psychiatrist is happy, you can actually go to the shopping centre, which is across the road. You can have leave for a short period of time. Other social situations, if you do go to the shops, you have to take your baby with you. You can't leave the baby with the nurses. You need to take them over in the pram, and it's just like being a normal mum and taking your kids to the shops. So it helps you get that practice back in dealing with social situations. My whole experience there, I spent 2 weeks initially, and then I went home for a few days and collapsed all again. I wasn't ready. I rushed. So I went back for another 2 weeks. Thankfully, they still had a bed available. So I spent a month in total in the hospital. I forgot to mention about the pediatrician review. So the pediatrician came and saw my son like the second or third day I was there, and he said, yeah, he's got silent reflux. So he put him on a medication called Losec, which was appropriate for my son. So definitely talk to your health professional about what might be right for your kids if they do have reflux. It was a daily dose, and they said it would probably take 3 or 4 weeks for him to start to really feel better, because the lining of the stomach and the esophagus has to heal. Still did take a few weeks, which is probably why I had that relapse when we went home too early. It was still really challenging. My parents don't live too far away, so they were able to come and help, and my husband's mum would come down occasionally to help out as well. So having that extra support from family is really, really helpful, and I'm very grateful that I have that, because I know there are a lot of people out there that don't have additional support networks. So all in all, it probably took till my son was about 4 months old for him to be in a fairly good routine, in that he wasn't screaming in agony for the whole day. He was still certainly not sleeping through the night. He would still get up like 3 or 4 times in the night, but he would have periods of time between that where he would sleep. So we were able to get a little bit of sleep, which was fantastic. He started on solids at 4 months of age, which the pediatrician had recommended. That can help with their reflux, apparently. So we started him early on that. He went really well with that. And then once he was at the point where he was sitting up, they get all that core stability, so that helps with prevent the reflux as well. Then he started to crawl maybe around 6 to 7 months. After that, we noticed a significant improvement. He was definitely in no more pain, and we could actually stop him on the reflux medication. And he was just back to being a baby who wasn't sleeping through the night. So all through that journey though, my anxiety is still there. I have learnt to manage it better. I've got a lot of really good techniques from the cognitive behavioural therapy sessions that I did at the hospital. But I'm by no means cured. I don't know if you ever will get cured of anxiety. Maybe some people do. I think for me, it's going to be a part of me for the rest of my life. And I just need to be very mindful of it and use some mindfulness techniques, and that I can cover some of the techniques I use in another video. But the anxiety is still there. But I realized that it's so common for people to have anxiety and depression, particularly perinatal anxiety and depression. It's so much more common, I think, than we realize. And after meeting women at the hospital that suffer with it as well, it affects anybody. You know, it's not a particular age or ethnicity or anything. It can affect anybody, and it can also affect the men in the relationship as well. In fact, my husband did suffer with a little bit of depression as I was sort of coming out of my main difficulties with anxiety, and I'll touch on that in another video. But so it can affect both partners in the relationship. I feel very fortunate for being able to come out the other side and to have learnt a lot along the way, and somehow feel like I have this bit of extra energy in me to try and do something about it, which is the whole reason why I started my brand, DeLuca Apparel. So it's really focused around positive messaging on clothing. This is one of the tees, Strong Mama. But some of my other designs are like Be Kind, Grateful, You Got This. And these are all sort of mottos that I sort of lived by as I was going through things. And I think that we really identify with our clothing, and that's why I wanted to start a brand that can empower women to live a more positive life, to then try and give back to people that are suffering from this. So a charity called Panda, Perinatal Anxiety Depression Australia, is a charity that I partnered with. They have a hotline that you can call if you are suffering from these conditions. And so I donate $1 from every sale to Panda, so that they can try and help build what they offer. So they're not a 24-hour service yet, but I think that would be a great goal, and hopefully I can help contribute in some way, and hopefully I can help normalize anxiety and depression, particularly around pregnancy, and destigmatize it. I think the more we talk about it, the more it's going to be normalized, and we just realize that you're not the only one. There's others out there, and there is another side to it. You will come to the other side. It's horrible while you're living it, but you will get there in the end. It will be okay, and I might be able to help shed some light on some things that you can do to help you get there through sharing my experiences. So that's a bit of maybe a long-winded backstory to me, but I will let you know a few more things in a few other videos. And if you have any questions, please pop them in the comments. Please subscribe and share my page because it is brand new, and let everybody know who you think might benefit from this page. If there's anything you want me to talk about, also pop it in the comments below. Thank you.